There is an infamous story about a cab driver that dropped off two females early one morning at a home in a Kingston address. A lady heard the car at the front of her yard and approached the driver, wondering what he was waiting on. The driver then told her he was waiting on the money from two girls he had just carried. They went in the yard. He then described the young ladies to the woman. She was shocked, as those two females were her two daughters that had passed. It turned out to be that they both died in the horrific train wreck months ago that marked history in Jamaica. The taximan, so horrified after knowing what those people had been through, fled without any money. Welcome to Tell the Tales, where we resurrect dying stories across the world. Please, if you're a fan of these contents, leave a like, but not just any like. Let the like button relive its tale. Let's go. It was described as the worst transportation system tragedy in Jamaica's history, and the second worst rail disaster in the world at the time, behind the Gambler train crash that took place in Pakistan almost a month later, claiming the lives of 300 people. It was the final weekend of summer, and the church members of the Holy Name Society of St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church in Kingston, led by the Reverend Father Charles E. Burrell, were up and about preparing for an all-day excursion to Montego Bay, the second city in the island of Jamaica. The trip had been widely publicized throughout the city, and hundreds had planned to make the journey. On Sunday morning, September 1st, 1957, the platform at the Kingston railway station was abuzz, with would-be travelers eager to secure a desired seat on the diesel-all train, readying for departure to take on the 109 miles journey from the first city of Kingston to the second city of Montego Bay. The trip to Montego Bay was a smooth one. Now, this journey is like from one end of the island to the next end. And between those two cities lie hilly terrains through deep rural parishes and communities through which the train line runs. What would happen on the trip back from Montego Bay would rock the nation hard. The return trip to Kingston would never reach its destination. After a day full of fun in Montego Bay, travelers had the best time of their lives. People were drinking, people got drunk, they swam and enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the countryside. They played music, they danced. It was just a perfect excursion. Now it was time for the return leg back to Kingston. The train was made of 12 wooden passenger coaches. These are compartments of the train where passenger seatings would be placed. Picture a caterpillar with 12 different body segments. Each of the compartments had a maximum passenger capacity of 80 people, which would add up to around 960 passengers, excluding train service crew members. However, there were between 130 to 150 people traveling in each coach, way above maximum loading capacity, putting up the tally to around 1,600 people on board. In essence, the train was overloaded, but this is a common practice in a country like Jamaica. Vehicles are normally over the maximum capacity, traveling from one point to the next. It was reported that citizens that were not on the trip ended up on the train back to Kingston. Robbers and other mischief makers were said to have hijacked the returning vehicle. It was now night, and the train was ripping through the dark, rural, and rough terrains where it approached a bend in the rails in a town called Kendal in the parish of Manchester, about midway back to Kingston. At around 11:10 p.m., several hundred yards from the main road of Balaclava, three train whistles blasted, signaling disaster. The driver had lost control of the swiftly moving train. Note: if there was any sleeping passengers at this time, they would have been awakened by the whistles, screams, and cries from other passengers as the train was derailing from the track. The coaches became loose and toppled over into a gully, making a pile of wooden compartments, crashing on top of each other. Remember, these were hilly terrains, and so once the coach runs off the track, it would basically flip on the side or even on the top. Two of the coaches were reduced to literal matchwoods, just the shells remaining, and the others at the sides torn out, tossing passengers into the shrubs or onto ground below. The train floor was the only thing left on the rail, which ran to a stop of about another quarter mile. Families in Kingston awaiting the arrival of the vehicle would not know the tragedy that struck around midnight. It was not until dawn neighboring community members would come and witness the bodies strewn across the countryside. Some had died on impact, while many others were critically injured. Survivors were searching for their loved ones through bushes and woods of the coaches. Looters were seen snatching items from the dead and critically injured. The remaining coaches were utterly shambles, with the dead and injured inside and underneath them. Survivors screaming and crying for help, some shouting the names of relatives and friends. Neighboring hospitals were filled. Compounds were chaotic, with staff being overburdened with an overflow of patients to attend to. At Mandeville, all the bodies were laid out on a grassy knoll behind the hospital, where lights were strung to wires from a couple of large trees to a small wooden building, serving as an office and shelter. There, anxious relatives filed by all night, trying to identify someone dear to them. There was no bed space in the facility. The Kendal train crash left 187 dead and 700 injured. Many were later buried in a mass grave near the crash site. The country had even declared a national day of mourning the following Friday. It was news that shocked the world, even without advanced telecommunication services. World leaders sent condolences to the Jamaican people. Through the ensuing Railway Commission of Inquiry, the cause of the crash was said to be the closure of an angled wheel brake cock. It was suggested that the brakes had been tampered with. Some crash survivors theorized that the mischief makers that hopped onto the train back to Kingston were the culprits, as one had threatened to cut the light wires in the train to carry out his illicit acts. The inquiry found many deficiencies in the Jamaica government railway and asserted that the trains had been kept in poor condition Yet, despite findings of the inquiry, researchers shows that it was the overcrowding of the coaches that played the greatest role in the extent of the carnage. Additional coaches had been added to accommodate the large numbers of passengers to whom the church had sold tickets. There were too many people on board on the train. After the disaster at Kendal, all wooden coaches were replaced with sturdier metal ones. Still, public confidence in rail transport took a sharp decline. Up to this day, community members of Kendal have said to have witnessed ghosts on the hills where the accident had happened, calling the vicinity one of horror and hauntings. And so, linking back to the story of the two females that took the taxi to Kingston. The Kendal crash was a national disaster that touched the lives of thousands of Jamaicans. The story of what happened at Kendal must never be forgotten.